Having a great day so far, evening or afternoon, depending on where you're joining us from. I'll allow a couple seconds for people to join the call. You'll notice that when you join, you're automatically muted. That's just because there's multiple people on the call, so it's just kind of to avoid any echoing, but there will be time for Q&A at the end of the call. If you're joining us for the first time, welcome to our assistant workshops. These are designed to kind of offer a bit of support to Montessori classroom assistants. They're a really important part of our community, and classrooms don't function without the important work that you do. Um, Today, we are having a presentation by Erin Palmer, and we're going to be focusing on understanding the Montessori approach and philosophy. Um, Erin is a Montessori educator, and she really willingly volunteered her time and wisdom here to present on this topic. This is something that's really important for anyone who's going to work within a Montessori space to understand. The session is being recorded and we'll be sharing this on the registration page come tomorrow. So just notice about that. I will be posting that if you need to log off early, you can access the rest of the recording there. If you have any questions throughout the presentation, feel free to use the chat. I'll be keeping an eye on it. And as I mentioned at the end, we will have some time for Q&A. All right, I'll go ahead and hand it over to Erin so she can present.
Terrific. Thanks, Camilla. Good evening, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Erin Palmer and really delighted to be here to share in this learning and opportunity around understanding the Montessori approach and philosophy. I just listened into the session last week on the role of the assistant, and if you haven't had a chance to access that, I hope you will. It's really exciting to be part of these kinds of events, to just be reminded to learn and, just gather helpful nuggets and tidbits as we continue on this really important work. Can click ahead. So we're here to, just really highlight the work of Maria Montessori. And in many of her readings, we find many inspirational quotes, and this is one of them. If education recognizes the intrinsic value of the child's personality and provides an environment suited to spiritual growth, we have the revelation of an entirely new child whose astonishing characteristics can eventually contribute to the betterment of the world. As I said, my name is Erin Palmer. I am currently the Director of Programs at Keystone Montessori School. We're in North Chelmsford, Massachusetts. And as the Director of Programs, I'm an on-site administrator supporting all aspects of the program, the classrooms and teachers, as well as our families, and just really working to support the daily goings on at our school. I come from a background where I started out as a Montessori teacher. I did my teacher training program at Xavier University in Cincinnati back in 1998, and then had the opportunity to work as a teacher in a couple of Montessori schools here in the Boston area before having the opportunity to move into administrative roles, where I really enjoyed the opportunity to have a little bit broader view of the Montessori setting. I'm also a Montessori mom. My daughter is now a high school senior. I can't believe that every time I say it. We feel so lucky that she had the opportunity to be a Montessori kid herself. She grew up in a preschool through grade 8 Montessori school before going on to her high school experience. I also have experience as a parent educator with redirecting children's behavior and redirecting for cooperative classroom, which really falls under a lot of the practice of positive discipline. I hope tonight is not the only night that we have any contact. Please feel free to reach out if there are any questions or reflections or insights. My email address is right here on the bottom of this slide. I'd be welcome to be in touch. And if anyone is in our local area, please reach out. Would love to be in touch in person or have folks visit on site. So I think a lot of us know a lot about Maria Montessori. She was a real person. I often talk with parents who, weren't really sure, is Montessori a person, a thing, or she lived from 1870 to 1952 and a total pioneer and incredible person in the work that she did. She comes to education from a clinical and scientific background, and her work really led her to this educational approach that is really centered on child-led learning. She was very focused on emphasizing independence for the child, providing hands-on learning, a very experiential approach. She was also very in tune to a sense of respect for the child and really understanding their natural development. She encouraged children to explore, to learn at their own pace, and she understood that best happened under special guidance with specifically designed materials. Um, with a real spirit in the core of her work to support the whole child and their development cognitively, socially, emotionally, and physically by thinking about the prepared environment and all the materials within that and the people within that setting. When I think about Montessori, when I think about my own early learning in Montessori, um, some of the many concepts are rooted in, perhaps these seven key concepts that I would, just want to really outline for you. The first being play is the work of the child. Play is their work, work is their play. Children are hardwired to engage, and so they want to explore everything around them, and they really see everything as something to play with. That is the work of their growth and development. The prepared environment we talk a lot about and think a lot about in Montessori, the prepared environment being their space. In our Montessori school, that is the classroom and the playground and other spaces that they use. It is so essential, and it's an environment of just enormous beauty where
Yes.
children can move freely within limits, with many opportunities to act independently and make choice. And speaking of independence, Montessori education is
Yeah.
really
All right.
rooted in supporting children's independence. We want to encourage their exploration. We want children to take responsibilities for their body, their movement, the way they take up space in the room, and just support every opportunity for them to be independent. Always being mindful of not doing for the child when they can do something themselves. And of course, the adult can often do things much quicker than the child. But if we're truly aligned with supporting children's independence, the adult creates the time and space for them to put on their own shoes, to work on their zipper, to wash their hands, and just really experience what it means to, be in charge of their bodies and their belongings and their environment. Observation is a foundational practice of a Montessori environment. Only through observation is how the adult really gets to learn and understand what is happening in the classroom, what the children are doing, what they're not yet doing, what they're choosing, what materials they're really drawn to, and really soaking in, and also what materials they may be avoiding or not yet using. through careful observation and documentation, you as the guide, the teacher, the assistant teacher, the lead teacher is where all the work is happening to assess children's mastery, helping us learn and understand when to introduce new challenges at just the right time so that we are, kind of dangling that carrot of the just right challenge, something that's not, too hard, but not too easy so that they're really inspired to stretch and expand their learning. And we want to tailor the learning environment to really foster that child's natural potential for growth, the child's natural potential for really realizing and self-discovery in their learning. And we know that in an early childhood setting, children learn through hands-on experiences, through their senses. From birth to age 6, we know that the child is in their sensitive period for language, order, movement, refinement of the senses. And we know that at this very important time of learning, children learn new things effortlessly and unconsciously. They're just absorbing the environment and everything in it without being able to filter anything out. So when we offer really rich and meaningful experiences, that's what they absorb. When we offer a lot of screen time or cartoons or things that maybe aren't as rich for the mind, they absorb that too. So those all of that is so important to exposing them to really rich and meaningful work with hands-on opportunities. Freedom within limits is another big part of the Montessori approach. Sometimes, and it can, for a lot of us, for me certainly, I didn't grow up in a Montessori environment, but those misperceptions and misconceptions of Montessori can fall under this one of freedom within limits. A Montessori classroom, as you know, is a very carefully prepared environment with very particular materials placed on the shelf in particular order, from simple to complex, from concrete to more abstract. And then within that very carefully prepared and structured environment, that is when there is this freedom within limits, so that then children know the boundaries, they know the edges that they want to be pushing when they make their choices, when they're working to build their independence. They want the freedom to choose. And as the children get older, they see with, more and more independence and, responsibility, just expands more and more opportunity to take charge of their learning. And that's something we really want to foster and encourage from very young ages, giving them the chance to make mistakes and to make amends, and for the adults in the environment to model making mistakes and making amends as well. And most of all, Montessori talked about respect and peace education, and children really being at the root of fostering that for us throughout our lives and around the world. Montessori is about respect, respect for yourself, for one another, the materials, the classroom. We aim to understand that each child is unique, truly unique. And as the adult in the classroom, we must do the work to really get to know every child, to really find the things that we love about them, and to help foster the things that they need to build, strengthen areas where they're challenged, and really just inspire an environment of love and learning and respect. We were just talking a little bit about sensitive periods, so just expanding on that a little bit. From birth to age 6, children are in sensitive periods of learning. Several of the ones I highlighted are language, order, movement, refinement of the senses, but we also have sensitive periods for small object. This graph is so tricky to read, but there are, there's sensitive periods for mathematics and Let's see, what am I missing? So many of them. And sensitive periods are really a window of opportunity. We can move to the next slide to talk a little bit more about sensitive periods and really knowing that they are these windows of opportunity, these specific time frames in a child's life where they are particularly receptive, where they're particularly ripe for learning and certain types of learning at a time in life that is more effective than at any time later in life. Maria Montessori observed that children have this innate ability. They're hardwired to absorb information during this critical period for your sense during these sensitive periods, and really plays a key role in the implementation of Montessori education. And you see, I'm sure you see children every day, children who, once they learn to zipper, they want to zipper their coat again and again. They want to help the other children zippering. They find anything in the environment to zipper. Children who are, they're cleaning and the brush and dustpan is just so appealing to them. And once they get the, handle of handling the dustpan and handling the brush and coordinating that movement to get the crumbs onto the dustpan. They just want to do that over and over and over again. And so when we're introducing the right things during these sensitive periods, it's just effortless learning that the children, that's really deep and intense learning that helps scaffold and build upon for later learning. Again, things like language, movement, sensitive period for small objects. I remember seeing a student, a very young child, we were heading outside and along the pathway, it was lined with kind of, rocks and pebbles. And along the way, the child saw pebbles that were in the walkway and not out along the lining. And she squatted down and she moved every single pebble from the pathway to its edge where the other pebbles were. And I thought, yep, that is the sensitive period for order. Things must be in their place and everything has a place. And again, when we give children the time and space to allow for this order, for their, language to be expressed, it just really embeds such a deep sense of learning. So important. And you're seeing this with, for those of you in younger environments with toileting, when children, that interest is sparked with toileting and they're really getting into the steps and managing their clothing. We just want to keep going with that because that's where, they may need, less and less, support and interference from the adult, ultimately supporting them in their independence, which is what we want. Along with sensitive periods, we're talking about the absorbent mind. The absorbent mind is that great big sponge that is absorbing everything around us, whether it's positive or negative or really nurturing or not. Thinking about the child in this stage of the absorbent mind, we really want to make sure that we're offering so much rich material for them. When we're reading books, we're pre-reading them and making sure the content is just such great quality that just really supports their learning, their understanding. They're at this stage where they can and they want to learn, the big words and the correct words for, plants or parts of the body and all the things that are important to them. The absorbent mind is just such a key part of the Montessori approach and what guides us in understanding what the child needs and where they are in their development. Montessori writes, "Our work is not to teach, but to help the absorbent mind in its work of development. How marvelous it would be if by our help, if by an intelligent treatment of the child, if by understanding the needs of his physical life, and by feeding his intellect, we could prolong the period of functioning of the absorbent mind." I love the learning triangle in Montessori. Montessori education, the Montessori approach does not happen by accident. It is a very intentional approach a very intentional formula with connectedness between the child, the environment, and the teacher. And while the teacher's role is that of a guide, sometimes when you look into a Montessori classroom and the teachers might be on the floor or in a chair observing, it's not quite evident, where is the adult? Where is the adult? But the teacher is so key to making sure the environment is ready for children and materials and lessons. So while, of course, the teacher is giving lessons individually or small group with, a real direct instruction approach, the students continue to work with their teacher to continue to seek out the teacher, but sometimes, less and less depending on the support that's needed. So the role of the teacher is just so key. The classroom environment, so very important. And the teacher's work, arguably is mostly spent in preparing the environment so that the children can then be independent and not so dependent on the other adults. So that prepared environment is what is part of enabling the developing sense of independence, the developing sense of order, and that freedom for the child so that they can access the materials and engage in that deep learning that we want. The child is another part of that triangle where now the children, once they get into the classroom with this prepared environment under the guidance of this expert teacher and adults, they are just exposed and ready to take advantage of all the materials that are presented to them and all the materials that they're able to practice and repeat important skills. But also so important in this triangle is the parent, and really seeing parents as partners in this journey, and only through partnering with parents can you do this work. Parents know children best. Of course, teachers and schools will get to know children so well and understand them from a very unique perspective. But there's nothing like that partnership between home and school with the parent and the teacher to really understand and do the great work of supporting children in their development. I want to pause here. We've touched on a handful of things, but I'd really love to hear from you. If you'd be willing to unmute yourself for a moment or jot down in the chat, I want to hear a little bit from you about what are you connecting with in what you're learning about Montessori or what your experience in the classroom. What are the things that you wish you knew then that you do know now? What are some concepts that are kind of, sparking some interest? And as you're learning more about Montessori and as you are getting into conversations about Montessori, what do you wish more people understood about it, or what do you find with your parents?
Hi, Erin. This is Christina.
Hi. Hi,
How you doing?
Christina.
I really like the seven principles that you presented that helps summarize the Montessori approach really well. So that's very helpful. Thank you.
Oh, terrific, terrific. And and there are many more, so we just keep, my hope is, just to keep adding to our toolkit, our teacher tool belt, of all the skills and strategies that you have and practice. Over time, we work with so many children and so many families, and you just become such a wealth of knowledge and information and perspective. I'm glad that's helpful.
Thank you.
What else is coming to mind?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, hi, Charlene.
Hi. I have learned not to hover as much and not have so much like try to control every little situation. Just observe and let them work it out.
Yes.
and like in their work, if they don't do something like the correct way, you know what I mean? Just not,
Yes.
oh, like running up and making everything perfect. It's
Yes.
it's been neat to see them um, just organize thoughts in their own way. Like when you shared like the child with the pebbles, nobody interrupted her. She got to do what she in her world like wanted to do. It's really beautiful.
Yes. Oh, that's wonderful. Good for you. I think that is one of the hard things to do as adults in this environment, and maybe as adults in general with young children, is to step back.
Yeah.
Step back and let it. We can be, adults can be quite quick to step in and fix or correct or help. And when we step back, that is when you get to see, the results of the work and the practice and those incredibly powerful moments of children helping one another, children saying words that they've heard you model. That's wonderful. I think that's such a good reminder for all of us, and hover is such a good word because we're often much bigger and much taller than these little people. So remembering too to when you step back, to sit down and get low and and notice yourself when you're, if you're up and really up high and moving around a lot, is there a moment to get low? Thanks for
Yeah.
sharing. We'll have time for lots more, reflections and happy to take some questions, but we'll go ahead and step ahead to the next slide. You've probably seen charts like this where we want to show and compare, a bit about the Montessori approach versus a more traditional approach in order to, highlight some of the benefits of the Montessori approach, understanding that typically in a traditional school setting and, the public schools in our area, um, traditional school is generally based on, the early part of the last century and the Industrial Revolution of teaching children skills and sort of a one size fits all to education. And, some of the struggles of that is that it's really designed to just teach to the middle and kind of address the average. And, for a number of the students that works and is sufficient, but then, so you have that sort of like, 60% in the middle, but then you have, 20% of the children who are beyond what's being taught and they're ready for more challenge and not getting that need met. And then you have that 20% at the other end who, need, um, more instruction or more time and practice, and they're not understanding, what's going on. But in a more traditional setting, it's like we're all on the train and the train's moving down the tracks and making all the stops along the way. So, highlighting and understanding what is different about Montessori and how it is really designed to meet the needs of the children. And something I love about the Montessori approach is that that's the approach of really meeting the needs of the children. And in a traditional school setting, I know that many, many wonderful teachers and I hear wonderful stories all the time of incredible teachers going above and beyond and meeting the needs of their children. But in a Montessori setting, the fact that the approach and the philosophy and the format is really designed for that, I think makes Montessori teacher is so fortunate to be able to work in that kind of a setting. So remember what we're offering is, the ability for children to really, choose the things that they love to do because, children learn what they love what they learn. As teachers, we have the incredible, great fortune of serving as a guide to encourage, to observe, and to allow the child's development to unfold. Montessori talked about the child educating themselves because they're engaging in such a rich, meaningful environment of materials under the expert guidance of teachers like you. We know that the mixed age grouping is an incredible benefit for children, allowing the younger ones to look up to the older ones to see what they're doing. The older ones really becoming mentors and leaders because that child has the opportunity to be in that same classroom for that multi-year experience. So even in early childhood, the kindergartner, really having the opportunity to be the mentor and leader. And for everybody to be part of teaching and collaborating and learning together. The environment so key to in enabling that inner discipline, that self-regulation, and really being able to meet the child where they are and progressing from there. Versus that more traditional approach, the one size fits all, the same age grouping, single age years where, in a setting where a teacher is changing each year, really cuts back on that continuity and ability to keep going and keep progressing. On this next slide, it was a bit of still comparing Montessori to traditional, but as I was looking at some of the values and benefit of these Montessori elements, I was really struck by, what it really does in terms of building character. So, when children are allowed to spend extended periods of time really deepening their focus and getting deep into their work, and a setting where teachers really get to observe and understand child development more and more, and an environment where children can learn about themselves and make mistakes and correct them, an environment where children just are oozing that love of learning and having those incredible aha moments. It made me really think about well, why is that a thing? What is that? And that really leans towards this next side of, building character where we're truly valuing concentration and persistence. And that's so important as children are continuing in their education journeys into, secondary school and beyond. Children who can concentrate and persist, those are just such valuable skills to carry on forward, and to really value differentiating curriculum, acknowledging that some children need more and they're working at a faster pace. Some children need much more repetition and practice, and being able to honor that is such an incredible gift for the teacher and the child. Montessori values autonomy and agency, such critical skills, and part of executive function development as they're getting older as well. So we can just see so many benefits and values that come out of this kind of approach for children. So as we kind of, come a little bit closer to the end, just really wrapping up the Montessori approach, Montessori believed that no human being is educated by another person. The individual must do it for herself or himself, or it will never be done. A truly educated individual continues learning because she is motivated from within by a natural curiosity and desire. Dr. Montessori felt, therefore, that the goal of early childhood education should not be to fill the child with facts from a pre-selected course of studies, but rather to cultivate her own natural desire to learn. And so, as the adult, when we commit to this kind of idea, this kind of approach, we find ourselves stepping back and allowing this child to unfold, to educate themselves. When we catch ourselves in those times of doing for the child something that they can do for their own and stepping back, not hovering, just really allowing that time and space is where you just see that natural curiosity, that desire to learn, that reflection on the learning, those aha moments, those really come out. And it's so exciting. I hope you're, as we're kind of talking through this tonight, I hope you're thinking and being reminded of the dozens and hundreds of moments where your students in your class have said, I did it. Or they're singing a song on their own that you've been singing over and over and over again by yourself, but now the other children are finally singing it with you. It's just so exciting and so rewarding, and we're so lucky, to be in this environment where we have such time with young children. My wish for you, I am just again so appreciative of you taking the time out of your evening to be here tonight. I hope this touches on some elements, some concepts that are reminding you to dig a little deeper, read a little bit more. And so if I could send on to you my wish. There's, as we arrow down this slide, Camilla, there are a couple of bullet points under here. And I would wish for you to visit Montessori schools, take a tour, observe classrooms, seek out professional development events in your area or online, speakers and workshops. There is nothing like putting yourself around others who are thinking and working to understand and exploring and in some of the same camp. You're not alone on your journey of learning more and becoming a better and better teacher and educator. And so, get out there and, get out of your classroom, take advantage of those professional development days, that we have to, take off and go visit another school. Read about Montessori. You can click a couple more, Camilla. I love the Montessori method by Montessori. I love the discovery of the child. Simone Davies is a great resource with some great reads as well. And I would guess any Montessori school website probably has some really incredible reading resources as well. Be sure to connect, get out there and connect, get on the lists of the American Montessori Society, hook into your social network and, find others that are in Montessori or in education settings or positive discipline, coaching settings, connect with others. And one of the last things, there might be one more or two more, Camilla. Think about partner up with somebody, whether, somebody in your own school where you might be going through some of these development opportunities together, or if you're in training, stay in touch with somebody from your training. Think an accountability partner is someone who you partner up and agree to check in with on a periodic basis and share, what's going on, what's going well, or what are some of the woes, what are some of the challenges. You're not alone in the celebrations that you experience, and you're also not alone in the challenges that you're facing in your classroom work. This is hard work, and it takes everything out of you every day. I see that in the teachers in my school. This is hard work. And it's really fulfilling and energizing to share it with one another when it's going well, when it's not going well. Develop that sense of team in your classroom, where you can develop just such an incredible powerhouse across, your lead teachers, your assistant teachers, to really look at the challenges, look at the problems, and, figure out the solutions. You have so much perspective and so much wisdom, and get connected with one another to share that, and just keep that open mindset for learning, especially when it gets frustrating, especially if you feel like some strategies aren't working. Force yourself to stay open, to seek out help and assistance and a different perspective, so that you can just, fulfill your promise to yourself to always be learning, always, becoming a better and better, guide and educator, so that your children benefit for many, many years, and your coworkers and adults around you also benefit from having you as part of their community. Those are my top 5 wishes for you. I thank you so much for joining me.